We are just 2 weeks away from opening day. Not much has changed during spring training, but we'll take one more crack at predicting the opening day roster in San Diego. Also, we'll take a look at Thursday spring training action where you had some relievers who were auditioning for that opening day roster. I'll tell you who impressed the most on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Follow the podcast on X at LockedOn_Braves and on Instagram at Locked On Braves. If you're new and watching on YouTube, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Then hit that thumbs up button and then leave me a comment down below. It sounds like a lot, but it's not, and it helps me out a ton. And if you're listening on the audio version, you can help out by leaving me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day, and you're about to be paid off for listening all off season long because we are just 2 weeks away from opening day, from actually having some games that count to talk about. We are almost there on today's podcast. I'm going to do one final opening day roster prediction. Not much has changed, but we will obviously talk about the bullpen. It was pretty much a showcase game for some of those guys who were battling for the final bullpen spots on Thursday. I'll tell you which ones I think impressed the most and who I think is going to get those final bullpen spots. We'll do all that on today's episode of a Locked On Braves. So thanks so much for tuning in and joining us. Let's get right into the opening day roster predictions. And one thing that has changed is the catcher position. And unfortunately, that is because of another injury to Sean Murphy. He's not going to be ready by opening day. I am hoping we hear at least about some progress on him before opening day to give us a timeline of when he could be ready. Initial timeline that was given said that he might be out for the first 2 weeks of the regular season, but we haven't really heard anything about him since then. But we've heard a lot about Drake Baldwin, and that's who I think is going to be the Braves' opening day catcher, with Chadwick Trump backing him up. And that one might be a little bit of controversial for some people out there because Sandy Leon has had such a great spring training at the plate, but I'm not going to read too much into that. And it's not like Chadwick Trump has been awful at the plate either. I still believe Chadwick Trump is going to be the backup. And I do think that Drake Baldwin will get the opportunity to begin the year. I mean, I don't know what else you wanted to see from this kid and hear about him, really. It's, yes, he's been impressive on the field, shooting balls the other way, picking up his hits, taking his walks, showing his good discipline at the plate. But you've also just heard from all the pitchers talking about how much they like throwing to him, how much they like the guy in general, and that's important. And yes, I know your teammates are going to give you rave reviews, but I mean, everything you hear about him says that he's ready, that he can handle the pitching staff. We know what he can do at the plate. I would be a little, honestly, shocked at this point if they don't give Drake Baldwin a chance. The only thing I can think of is if they did not want to start his clock, but I believe he's going to be up at some point this year. Why not just go ahead and give him a 2-3 week runway to see what you have in him? And look, Sean Murphy comes back healthy. I'm all for plugging Sean Murphy back in there and letting it be his job and seeing what he can do. But I think we're going to see Drake Baldwin at some point this season. Here's a good little test run to see what he can do. And look, if he comes up and he's just on fire for 2 to 3 weeks, hey, make him force your hand. And maybe you go with a Sean Murphy and a Drake Baldwin catching situation. I don't think they would do that because they want Drake Baldwin to continue to get everyday at-bats. But again, he comes up and crushes it, then maybe you do have a split situation like you've had with Murphy and d'Arnaud the last couple of years, even though I don't think that's been great for either one. But again, I think Drake Baldwin's going to be on the opening day roster with Chadwick Trump backing him up. Rest of the starters, pretty straightforward. Matt Olson at first base, Ozzie Albies at second, Austin Riley at third base, and Orlando Arcia at shortstop. I know a lot of you are excited about what we've seen from Nick Allen in spring training, and I am too, even Eli White to some degree. He's looked pretty good at shortstop and okay with the bat in spring training, but it's going to be Orlando Arcia to begin the season. We've talked about it already. You've asked me several times on the Mailbag podcast, what would it take for a Nick Allen, for Eli White, for somebody to overtake Orlando Arcia? I think it's going to take him being one of the worst hitters in baseball through the first couple of months of the season before you really see a change. Now, I talked about this on yesterday's podcast. I've mentioned it a couple of times. I do think we need to see more pinch hitters come in for Arcia late in games in certain spots, and you need to see Nick Allen inserted as a not defensive replacement to say that Nick Allen is so much better defensively than Arcia. I don't even know if that's the case. I think they're both really good defensively, but I think Brian Snitker needs to do more of that in big spots and just give Nick Allen some starts every now and then. Again, it doesn't have to necessarily replace him, but Arcia needs a breather every now and then. Give Nick Allen a start once or twice a week and keep him fresh. And, in case you do need to start him down the road or in case there is an injury, I'm all for utilizing Nick Allen that way because I think he's deserved that and earned that with what we've seen so far in spring training. But that's your infield. In the outfield, it's going to be Jerickson Profar in left field, I'm assuming he's going to be ready for opening day. If that were to change and he's not ready for opening day and he's not healthy, then that does change things quite a bit with what the Braves might do. What I think would happen in that situation, if Jerickson Profar is not ready, is that you would have Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz in the corners. And I think that probably puts Luke Williams onto the bench. Spoiler alert, I don't have Luke Williams on my bench right now. But if that were to happen, I think Luke Williams would be the next guy up to get a roster spot. But I'm going with the indication that Profar is going to be ready for opening day in left field. Michael Harris in center field. Jared Kelenic in right field because the Padres have a bunch of righties. We'll talk about Jared Kelenic against the lefties later in the podcast. But that's going to be your starters on opening day. Those are going to be the guys in your lineup. And then obviously Marcell Ozuna at DH. And then the bench. This is the same bench that I predicted at the beginning of spring training. Nothing has changed here for me. It's Chadwick Trump, Brian De La Cruz, Nick Allen, and Eli White. I thought those were the leading candidates coming into spring training. And certainly, Trump and Brian De La Cruz were pretty much locks, but Allen and White have proven that they deserve those bench spots. So position player-wise, I think everything is pretty chalk from where it was in spring training, except for Sean Murphy not being there because of the injury. On the pitching side of things and the rotation, I think everything is going to be pretty chalk as well. I think it's going to be Chris Sale, Spencer Schwellenbach, Ronaldo Lopez, Grant Holmes, Ian Anderson in that order to begin the year. That's how I would order them. I know Ian Anderson, the outings we've seen are just head scratching. I gave you a lot of those numbers yesterday. It just doesn't make sense at all. With all of the walks, but he hasn't given up a lot of hits and he hasn't given up a lot of runs. I said coming in, though, in order for somebody to supplant Ian Anderson, he has to just be awful. And I don't know that I can say he's just been completely awful, but it's not just him being bad. You needed somebody else to step up to elevate themselves. And AJ Smith-Shawver being the main one and Bryce Elder were the main candidates to do that. Certainly Bryce Elder hasn't impressed enough. And I don't think AJ Smith-Shawver has impressed enough. I think AJ Smith-Shawver is probably better. And if you're asking me right now, do I think, or would I rather have Ian Anderson or AJ Smith-Shawver as my fifth starter? I probably would say AJ Smith-Shawver. But again, it's not a big enough gap between the two to risk losing Ian Anderson altogether. Now, maybe you put AJ Smith-Shawver in the rotation and you kick Ian Anderson to the bullpen, where I think there could be a need for a guy like him early in the year to have a long reliever like that. But I think the Braves are going to give Ian Anderson a shot, at least give him 2 to 3 starts to begin the year, see what he can do, see if this command improves at all. I don't know how long we have to wait on that, but we're going to have to be a little bit patient. But I think they're going to give Ian Anderson a crack at it. For one thing, he hasn't given up a lot of runs. He hasn't given up a lot of hits. And we've seen him succeed like this in the past. Not to the point where he had a nearly 10 walk per 9. That can't happen. But if he does get it down to a more manageable, 4 walks per 9 innings, we've seen him succeed with high walk rates at the major league level. I don't know how long he can get away with that, but we've seen him succeed like that before. So I think the Braves are at least going to give him an opportunity to begin the year. Now, in the bullpen is where things get a little dicey, and we're going to talk more about the bullpen in the second segment because Thursday's game basically was a showcase for the bullpen and who's going to get those final spots. And I think there was a clear winner in that and a clear loser in that as well. The top couple of bullpen spots are pretty locked down. You got Raisel Iglesias as your closer. I think Pierce Johnson's going to be your primary setup guy, along with Dylan Lee and Aaron Bummer. I think those are going to be your 4 main guys at the back end of a game. I think Daysbel Hernandez is going to be in there as a middle reliever. I know he has options left, and you could technically option him and give one of the non-roster invitees a chance to begin the year in order to preserve depth. There's just nobody that's really impressed me enough to not include Daysbel in the bullpen. And I am certainly of the mindset of put your best arms in there. And I think Daysbel is one of your best arms. So I have him in the bullpen. If he's not in the bullpen, it's because the Braves are trying to create as much depth as possible. Now, the last 2 to 3 spots in the bullpen have gotten a little bit more shaky since the beginning of spring training. I had Angel Perdomo in the bullpen at the beginning of spring training. To me, he has not looked like the Perdomo that I was hoping for. And I think the Braves are going to put him on the injured list to begin the year to give him a little bit more time to get up to speed. This, according to my rules expert, Mass Boost, who says Perdomo can still go on the 30-day rehab assignment since he hasn't had a rehab assignment yet coming back from Tommy John surgery. He missed all of last year. So the Braves could still technically put him on a rehab assignment, even though he is fully healthy at this point. And I think that's probably the right way to go because he has not looked as sharp as I would have hoped in spring training. He hasn't done a lot to necessarily prove to me that he can be that big difference maker in the bullpen. So if the Braves can give him a little bit more time to ramp up, create some depth, let one of these other arms get in the bullpen, I think that's the way to go. So my final 3 guys that I have in the bullpen right now, I know we haven't seen them in a spring training game yet, but I think Hector Neris is going to be in the bullpen. I think he's going to be one of those guys. He's a veteran. He's 2 years removed from a great season in a year where offense was exploding. Again, we need to see him, but I'm assuming he's going to be part of that bullpen, and he still has plenty of time to get ramped up. That's not an issue, but as long as he doesn't look completely awful, that splitter is still splitting, I think he's going to be a part of the bullpen to begin the year. Now, these next 2 both pitched on Thursday. Aniel De Los Santos, I think he's going to be part of the bullpen. To me, he's been one of the most impressive bullpen arms, if not the most impressive bullpen arm in spring training so far. And not just in terms of the results, which have been good, but if you watched him throw on Thursday, especially in his first inning, even in the second inning, I thought the stuff was good, but especially in that first inning he pitched, that's really good stuff. We'll talk more about that in a second. And then I'm giving the final spot to Anderson PR. I know it wasn't a great day for him on Thursday. He is a Rule 5 pick. So if the Braves don't keep him, they either have to offer him back or work out some sort of exchange with the Marlins to keep him. But I think the Braves at least put him on the roster to start as kind of that garbage, long reliever type of guy. I don't mean to call him garbage, but that garbage time reliever that comes in when the game's kind of out of hand one way or the other to try to give you some added innings. And I like the stuff from PR. And I'll talk about that more in a second. Other guys who are still fighting for that spot, Buck Farmer, he would be one of the other options. Maybe Jake Diekman if you wanted another lefty. Those are some of the other options for the bullpen. Next, we'll get into Thursday's game where I'm going to dive a lot deeper into PR, into De Los Santos, into Buck Farmer, and others who pitched on Thursday. All those guys battling for these last roster spots. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. But next, we'll go deep into their outings on Thursday, where I was impressed. I know they gave up a lot of runs on Thursday to the Phillies, but there were still some impressive stuff in that outing from the Braves pitchers. We'll get into that here next. Well, let's jump into Thursday's game recap, where it was basically a showcase game for the bullpen arms. The bullpen arms that are battling for those last spots. You put them out there against a really good lineup in the Phillies, and a Phillies lineup that I know it's spring training, but those at-bats were locked in. I want to talk more. I got a lot I want to talk about here. We're going to go very deep on a spring training game, and I know that's not always what you are tuning in for, but I just think there's a lot to take away from this game. So let's start with PR. 54 pitches to get just 3 outs. Not good. However you want to draw it up, it was not a good outing. However, I still like the stuff from him. It's a cutter at 93, 94 and a hard-breaking slider. He was facing the Phillies opening day lineup. I think this game really got away from him in the first two batters. He got ahead of Trey Turner. Chadwick Trump called for a slider down and away. He left it backed up on him. It spun over the middle of the plate, and Trey Turner's just not going to miss that. So you had a guy 0-2. You spin one up there, and Trey Turner, he gets you for a home run. And then in the second at bat, threw a cutter on the outside corner, looked like a strike, was called a strike. Bryce Harper goes for the challenge, and it was off by, the smallest of margins. And that call gets overturned. He goes on to walk Bryce Harper, and you just wonder how long that lingered for him, because he was behind almost every hitter after that. He wasn't getting that call on the outside corner to lefties, and it just felt like he never recovered. He was constantly getting behind in the count. And so that's why I say this outing really just went off the rails for him after those first two batters that he faced. Now, that's not an excuse for him. You got to settle down after that. I wish during that inning, I don't think it ever happened. I know it's a spring training game and you're not going to see many mound visits, but the guy needed a mound visit just to reset. But he just never seemed to recover after that. He wasn't really sure where the edge of the strike zone was. He couldn't find it. Phillies hitters were, like I said, locked in. They were taking some really close pitches, making him come over the middle of the plate, and they just didn't miss it. And they kept getting ahead in the count. So it was just an absolute disaster for PR, who was hoping to have a really good outing against the top of that Phillies lineup, show that he deserves that final spot, and it just really got away from him. But I do like the pitch mix. I think the cutter, at that velocity, you don't generally see it like that. I do wonder if it's more like an AJ Minter type of cutter, where not necessarily, at least at this point of AJ Minter's game, that cutter's not a swing and miss pitch for him unless he's using it like a slider, but it's a pitch that AJ Minter can't throw over the plate. And I get the feeling that that's what it's like for PR, is that it's a cutter that you just can't throw over the middle of the plate. And I get it. You can't throw any pitch over the middle of the plate, but some cutters, a Kenley Jansen, a Mariano Rivera, I know I'm talking about the best relievers in the game, but some of those cutters, you can throw it down the middle of the plate and guys just can't square it up. It always was fascinating to watch Kenley Jansen when he was with the Braves. He would just throw cutters 93 right down the middle, and guys just couldn't hit it. This isn't that type of cutter from what I can see from PR. It's a cutter that he can command pretty well, but it's a cutter that he's trying to backdoor to lefties on the outside corner for strikes. It's a pitch that he's trying to get ahead with on the corners. And if he throws it over the middle of the plate, it just doesn't seem to have that movement to get that swing and miss. Again, very similar to where AJ Minter is with his cutter at this point. It's a pitch that if he leaves it over the middle of the plate, there's just no forgiveness for it. Now, the slider I do like a lot. I think that slider is his swing and miss pitch. I just don't know how you get ahead. What do you use to get ahead so that you can use that slider as your swing and miss pitch? So again, I do think there's something there with PR. I hope the Braves are able to keep him. Maybe if you're not going to keep him on the roster, you find a way to make a small move with the Marlins so that you can get full control over him and send him to Gwinnett, because I think he could be a big league reliever at some point. Other thing I want to talk about in this is that challenge system. It feels like in the games that I've watched with a challenge system this spring training, it really shrinks the strike zone a lot. And this game in particular, again, you were facing that Phillies lineup that has Bryce Harper, who he was challenging pitches that were just off the plate. He has a great eye at the plate. Kyle Schwarber has a really good eye at the plate. All of those guys. And they were taking pitches just off the zone. And after, that first one that Harper called that was just barely out of the zone, the umpire really tightened up his strike zone after that. And I feel like you've seen that a lot in spring training. These strike zones just seem really tight. And I think ultimately that's going to be a good thing for the game, because you're going to have fewer strikeouts. You're going to have more action because you're going to force pitchers to come in the zone. And so you're going to have more action on balls in play. I think that's ultimately going to be a good thing. But that's going to be quite the adjustment if more umpires are going to be less willing to give more off the edges because of the ABS challenge system. And they don't want to get one of those wrong. So that's just something to keep in mind going forward. Now, next out of the bullpen was Enyel De Los Santos. He strikes out the side in his first inning. He strikes out Bohm, Schwarber, and Real Muto. He was up to 98 on the sinker. The Bohm at bat, He got him on a nasty cutter that looked like a slider at 88. And then he got Schwarber to swing and miss on a couple of really good changeups. I mean, you're talking about a righty throwing to a lefty, and it is fading down and away from that left-handed hitter, and he's getting him a swing over the top. They were calling it a splitter at times. It's a changeup, split changeup, whatever you want to call it. Had some really good movement on it. And then he struck out JT Realmuto with an 86-mile-per-hour cutter. They just kind of set in the middle of the plate, and that's kind of what I talked about with the cutter with PR, the cutter with Minter. They sit their cutters in the middle of the plate. They're usually going to get hit hard. He did that to Realmuto, and it's a swing and miss. And I did get foul tipped into the glove for the strike 3, but he was able to strike out the side. He came back out for another inning and fell behind Bryson Stott, 2-0, another guy with a great eye. He took a couple of close pitches, got ahead 2-0, and then he ambushed a 96-mile-per-hour sinker and hit a liner just high enough to get over the right field fence for a home run. And then he fell behind Marsh 3-0, had a pitch timer violation in that didn't help. He was always running the clock down to the very last second. He got back 3-2 in that count and then just missed with a changeup away for ball 4. He left an 0-2 pitch down the middle, and the hitter put a good swing on it. He was late on it, but he got enough of the barrel on it, shot it out to right field. So that was just a bad pitch in a good spot. He got ahead of that hitter, but then just made a bad pitch. It's a very impressive arm, though. Again, this is the most impressive stuff that I've seen of any reliever in spring training. 5 2/3 innings this spring, 2 hits, 1 walk, 2 earned, and 7 strikeouts. All of that damage, both hits, the walk, and the earned runs, all came in his second inning today against the opening day Phillies lineup. So I think he's earned that spot in the bullpen right now with what we've seen in spring training. It's a very big test for him today, and I thought he looked really, really good. As for Buck Farmer, gave up a jam single on a 91-mile-per-hour sinker to Alec Boehm, and it just was downhill from there. He could not get it together. He did get Schwarber to swing and miss on a change and a slider. He walked Realmuto. He left a slider up to Max Kepler, who hit a 3-run bomb. I do like the changeup of Buck Farmer. It's got some really good depth on it, some good drop on it. I'm just not sure that sinker is enough to set it up. And when I watch Buck Farmer pitch, I have people all the time that say, why don't you just put Bryce Elder in the bullpen? Let's transition him to the bullpen. And I always say, I don't think he's the type of pitcher that's going to have success in the bullpen. And when I watch Buck Farmer pitch, I know Buck Farmer has had some success as a bullpen reliever, and he may still get a chance in this bullpen. It looks like Bryce Elder out of the bullpen. It's a good changeup. It's a pretty good slider, but it's a 90 to 91 mile per hour sinker, and he doesn't have anything he can blow you away with up in the zone, and everything's down. They all have good movement. It's the same thing as Bryce Elder. It is a very fine line to be successful, and that's how I feel with Buck Farmer. So those were the 3 pitchers that were really auditioning on Thursday for a spot. I thought De Los Santos clearly was the best of the 3. I still like the stuff from PR. Buck Farmer, I haven't seen enough from him this spring training to show me that he deserves a spot on the bullpen. On the offensive side of things, not a lot to get into. Jared Kelenic faced a tough lefty today, and Christian Sanchez, who's been really good in spring training, a really good lefty. Kelenic struck out against him both times, once on a nasty slider, another time on a changeup. I don't think he's going to get many opportunities against the lefty. I know this is just one appearance in spring training against the lefty, but it is a long track record of him at the big league level struggling against left-handed pitching. So I think there will be a platoon, and on the other side of that, Brian De La Cruz started in this game, and he at least put the ball in play against Sanchez, and then he did double off the wall against a righty later in the game, and he's had a pretty good spring training. So I think it will be a platoon to begin the year with Jared Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz. I think De La Cruz has earned it. And again, it's a small sample size in spring training, but it wasn't a good look for Jared Kelenic, who got a chance against a tough lefty today, and the at-bats just did not look very good at all. So those are my takeaways from Thursday, but let me know what you think in the comment section below. What did you see with those relievers? Did you see anything in the Jared Kelenic at-bats to give you any kind of hope or thought that he might get some chances against lefties? Let me know in the comment section down below. But next, we'll get into some of your comments as we wrap things up, and we're 2 weeks away from opening day. We'll get into the rest of this podcast here next. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? I do that all the time. I usually have to ask my wife, where did it go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. That's something that I deal with a lot. Like I said, I have 3 kids, wife. We're always spending money. We're on the go. We're going grocery shopping, out to eat all the time. It is hard to keep up with your expenses. And that's where Monarch Money can really help you out. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com. That's 50% off your first year when you use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, with each 1 ounce serving giving you 6 grams of protein, over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shell variety. I'm always on the go, like I talked about earlier. Got a big family. We're always doing things and on the go. So I love the no shell variety for the quick and easy cleanup as well. But if you like cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Wonderful Pistachios. Go to wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that provides a protein punch. Thank you all so much for joining me on today's podcast. I do appreciate it. Lav S saying, I love Wonderful Pistachios. Thank you there for that. PJ's Braves asking, Doc, are you still heading to opening day? And Doc is, so that'll be good. Doc supporting the home team there on the West Coast for opening day. Anybody else going to opening day on the West Coast, let me know. I plan to go to the home opener. Hope to see you all there at that. But we are, again, 2 weeks away from the home opener and getting things underway. Cannot wait for that to get happening. And if you're an MLB The Show fan, early access starts tonight. That's why I'm doing this a little bit later, because I was going to be up late anyway, getting into some of the early access. So looking forward to that. Way to kick off the baseball season a little bit for me, getting in on some of the video game action. So looking forward to that. Kristen Angelica, home opener, going to be there. Can't wait to see you there again. Miguel Freya, thanks for joining today. PJ's Braves, Live S, appreciate you joining. Jeffrey Humphreys, as always. Lauro Bond, appreciate you joining today. Gene C. Gordy, thank you so much for the support here at Locked On Braves. Does mean a lot to me. We're almost to another season. Can't wait to get there. World's tallest drummer in our fantasy baseball league. Thanks for joining. And thanks for being here live with me on today's episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, Lauro, as well. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. You all have been so great to me, so gracious to me, joining me here on the podcast and our Locked On Braves community. Can't wait to grow it again during the upcoming season. We'll have so much coming your way. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves for all the content we got coming your way. We'll have a lot between now and opening day. Got a special guest for you next Thursday that's never been on the podcast before. I think you're really going to like them, so looking forward to that. Again, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves. Follow us on Instagram at LockedOnBraves. I got to do a better job over there. I promise you I'm trying, but we'll definitely have a lot of content coming your way once the season starts over on Instagram. And make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. We will talk to you next time.